So Phil Beisel, we talked about this in the green room, but I think I have to admit it right here on the screen to the crowd, to everybody out there. You send me a little DM a little while ago. You go, "Hey Randy, I'm sitting here on Zoom and I'm going to click off,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh no, oh no! I trusted my human brain
No, you can't do that anymore.
remember our time." And instead of telling my digital assistant to remind me, oh my goodness gracious, what is wrong? And what am I doing? What was I doing at the time? I was actually editing the number one bestseller, well, not yet,
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. You
It's
were
coming
complaining
out
about that.
about AI.
You were editing and complaining about that author that picked up that data chapter.
In fact, I'm in the middle of all the fabulous things that AI is going to do for us. I'm literally in a chapter that's talking about.
Yeah, and you're not using it.
I'm not using it.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. But I did have it pick out my shirt.
It's
So
okay. I
yeah.
mean, I'm sure you have a flip phone sitting around there too, Randy.
Oh yeah, it's right over here. All right. Well, speaking of the future and speaking of, really, what's going to be the most important thing in our future is probably our best friend of the future. Our dog is going to have to take a back seat to Optimus, who's going to be just the greatest, the greatest friend ever. I'm gonna keep talking for a minute, Phil. I'm sorry, but I was watching this robot the other day playing ping pong with a human.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded because I played a massive amount of ping pong, and I'm pretty darn good on the cruise ships. I usually would win, not every time, but almost every time I would win on the cruise ship. But what I did was I would play myself against a wall down in the basement against a concrete wall. Of course, the concrete wall had these divots in it and stuff, so it made it more interesting. But and then maybe I could coax my mother when my best friend wasn't available to play. But now you don't have to even think about all that. You can learn to be an amazing ping pong player with your robot buddy.
Yeah, or just send him out to do your dirty work.
I mean,
Yeah.
people just don't think about that's the future that we're really talking about
It's
is that you
yeah, it's
don't
gonna
have
be
to go down and play against the wall. You can play your robot buddy.
it's
And
gonna be
that,
pretty impactful companion, very next level compared to these virtual, assistants that are, people are having relationships on it. I mean, like just sort of like creating constant conversations with these LLMs,
yeah.
and they're not embodied. And once you have something that's embodied, the utility value goes up,
I
tenfold,
think the
hundredfold.
social value goes up. I thought that these
Yeah,
little characters, and apparently the little characters are working to get people more interested in having these interactions. So the characterization has helped, but man, having the embodied product, I think is going to be huge. Okay, let's
you know,
get on to the subject at hand.
sure.
The subject at hand is that, I watched the video, the first video in a long time of Optimus, and um, uh, you know, I had just seen a video of Figure loading the dishwasher better than I can, and Optimus kind of looked clunky by comparison. A
Yeah.
lot of people had the same opinion, a little slow, not very quick on the uptake and conversation. Is that how you saw it?
Not really. I mean, I was a little surprised by it, but I think there's an explanation, and it kind of works like this. First off, Elon's willing to just put out there what is in the lab or what he sees with very, very little filters. There's not a marketing team that's curated the dishwasher example to some kind of perfect purity, um, with the right lighting and all the things that Elon just doesn't do it that way. I mean, you've seen his XAI presentations. He kind of like shows up late, the team, it's very organic. And I don't see, um, I don't see a lot of preparation involved in doing those demos. I do see some purity. You know, I think there's something very refreshing about seeing something that is straight from the lab without that filter.
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, I think I have seen types of things like this where it looks like uh, a product, when it reaches some new level of integration, is taking steps backwards. And I remind people that the things that happened before certainly can just show up again. Like it's like if they've done it before, they can
Yeah.
pull it forward again. What I think we saw with the gold robot in that particular demo is, first off, we saw no hands really. I mean,
Right.
even though it had these dummy hands, and I think that Tesla's trying to protect the hand in the sense that um, it's regrouping on how it wants to do that hand. It's advancing it to a different level, and I think that they have no interest in showing it off at this level, either because it's not ready, or simply because they're tired of everyone studying their every move. You know, because that's happening frame by frame. You have a Chinese robot companies looking at what they're doing and just
100%.
playing copy paste. So I think what I saw is that this is an integration test. This is the first time, I think, so to my knowledge, that we saw a Grok-like voice interface to the movement, to be interpreted and then cause the bot to do some action. So it's like command and control integrated.
Right.
So typically what you have in a lot of engineering is you have a lot of teams bringing up their subcomponents, and then you have like an integration test or an integration moment where you pull those things together.
Right.
And the outcome of that first integration is usually very clunky, almost in every product. I mean, so many things that we did at Rivian felt like that. Like people thought, oh, those cars that were the show cars were, we're done. Check the box, we're over with. And we were multi-years away from being done,
Right.
and the first car that then showed up in the field, I mean, those cars that looked like they were done literally couldn't go over 10 miles an hour.
Right.
But nobody knew that.
Right.
And we weren't lying about it. We just simply weren't saying, obviously people knew that these weren't shipping cars, but some people thought, oh my God, they look great. I wish I could get in one and drive it. And I'd be like, well, you'd be very disappointed because it reaches 10 miles an hour. And if you turn it too hard, the wheels lock and rub against the wheels. It's all set up wrong. So I saw that, like, I looked at that and I thought, my engineering brain just looked at that and said, oh, this isn't they showed up in a lab. They videoed it. Mark, right?
Yeah.
CEO of Salesforce. Just Elon, can video it? Go ahead. Send it out. But what I saw is integration, like an integration of the command and control. And I think it's the first time we saw that. Normally, what we saw would be Optimus doing something, dancing or walking down the hill and maintaining its balance. But no one's telling it, walk down the hill,
right,
or do this. And I think that there's been a team that's working on getting the Grok integration. They've probably taken some version of the XAI, because everybody that's seen Grok knows that you can now talk to Grok and Grok will talk back to you, and it's very fluid and it works very well. But what's different here is you can't just take that and lift it and put it in Optimus and call it a day, because Optimus needs to have its trained data set needs to be has to have a lot of contextual awareness. You saw, for example, Mark asked it, I think he said something like, can you tell me where I can get a Coke? And but it said, no, I can bring you to the kitchen.
Right.
That was not scripted. That was literally, you could tell that was not scripted.
Yeah.
Now, what I think is also true is that the AI for the control side, meaning the movement interpretation of the skills to move the bot, I think that was on board. I think the inference was still in the cloud. And you know, it's almost immaterial because
Right.
they've what you know, so Tesla has, I'm sorry, Optimus has a microphone. It actually obviously picks up the voice.
Mhm.
It's now sending that into the entire command and control pipeline, right? It's probably remoting the command side to the
Right.
cloud,
Right.
getting back the interpretation of that, which is sort of like, um, um, you know, I want to move. It's a larger plan, right? It's not like it didn't get a plan that said, you know, put one foot in front of the other.
Mhm.
It said, walk to the kitchen.
Right.
And then probably locally it's interpreting what that means. Although I really don't know how it knows where the kitchen is. So there's actually a lot more there than meets the eye. And I think another point I would say, Randy, is that I think Tesla's done, so I'm going to say around the June timeframe, I think Elon did a fairly fat reset on the Optimus project.
Mhm.
Um, when I say reset, I don't mean like, oh my God, you know, we're not doing well. We got to bury this thing and start
Yep.
over. You know, companies like Tesla, when you're doing something that's very frontier, you know, the R&D is in process. It's in line. You know, the R is not separated from the D.
Right.
So
Right.
so the research happens kind of in line with the development, and they go down paths that sometimes are false paths, and they say, and then they discover, well, that's not the way we really want to train this bot. We should do it differently. Like, uh, you know, and so I think what you see is I think Elon has did a pretty at the end beginning of the summer did a pretty fat review on Optimus and determined certain things that structurally I believe that he thought he had the wrong team in place, and he's moved Shock as the VP of vehicle autonomy to the VP of AI in general
Mhm.
for Tesla,
Mhm.
because I think he thinks that he's got the right leadership skills to bring that forward. That you should check off as a positive. I mean, these things
Yes.
happen. You have to find the right person, and if you're not sure, you know, it's not like there's some beautiful plan that says this is exactly how you build this thing.
Sure.
There's goals and there's desired attributes that you wish the product to have, but you don't know how you're going to get there until you start working day
Yeah.
in, day out.
And it seems like they have three. I think things have changed now. And I think you know, anybody that's following this closely needs to realize that we've talked about it over and over. Scott has been on the show how many times talking about this, that the hands and the brain were the two big things.
Mhm.
Well, I think the brain is now there. I mean, you've got this massive uh, cortex down, in Texas that's going to become even more, massive in a couple of weeks. But I think they've probably got enough compute. That's just me thinking out loud. And to your point, they could be using the cloud, which would be why there was a little bit of delay there. And so I don't think that's the issue. I think the issues you're running into now are they completely decided to change the hand in a significant way. And then what's really going to be the hardest step of all might be the integration. So
No, I mean,
the training seems to be the solved part.
yeah,
Because they said, we found out we can train it with vision, so we're going to use vision. So it was kind of like, okay, we got that done. But there's a lot of difference, as you're pointing out, between training to go through a process of putting the right dishes in the dishwasher and giving it an instruction while it's doing it. Oh no, don't put that dish in there, put this dish in there.
no,
And then don't forget that you need to close it and turn it to this dial at the end. There's that integration and that conversation back and forth, integrating it with the parts moving and doing what they're supposed to do
yeah,
in every single circumstance imaginable. That's a lot.
yeah. I mean, this conversation is not geared towards taking away from the competitors and their
Right.
and their engineering efforts. That's not the point of this. The point is to say that Tesla's in the top group here. They are trying to produce a product that is fairly refined
Mhm.
versus some of the competitive offerings. And, when you look at this from a perspective of you want to bring this to manufacturing, you want to bring it to manufacturing at tremendous scale, um, and everybody's trying to rush you, because, well, I mean, Tesla's the kind of company that decided that they wanted to put it out there. I think the weird thing about this whole thing is, had Tesla said nothing about humanoid bots at all and just continued to work on them in the lab, we would have heard rumors and blah blah blah. And I think that you'd have 1/10 the competitors out there right now.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's not Elon's concern. He doesn't really worry so much about that. He's trying to build I don't want to say a perfect product because I think
Mhm.
in his mind he knows that it's a version 1 product.
Mhm.
But you've got to figure out what attributes. So if you go to a vehicle engineering point of view, there's a word used here called attributes, and it's meaningful because it means that you're assigning a certain thing that you want to be true. Um, Maybe the turning radius or the battery capacity or the range or the curb weight, and these attributes fight with each other,
Yep.
because sometimes you can't necessarily do all of them. Um, and
So I was in the locks. I was in the security business. That was the first thing that I did professionally,
uh
and it was just a simple thing, just a padlock. Okay, just the pad. How simple is a padlock? And the rule in the security business is show me what you want to secure and against what, and I'll build you the perfect padlock.
mm, yeah,
But you have to know. But if it's a different device that you want to secure it against,
yeah,
got to build the padlock differently. So to your point, what do they want the bot to do? In what environment, to what end, how
yeah.
quickly? I mean, those would all, and then yeah. So you've got attributes, 100%.
I think that there's this expectation that when Optimus shows its face, let's say in the consumer market, because it's very likely not to appear there in probably manufacturing, light manufacturing, service businesses, and then eventually to consumer. But notwithstanding Elon's comments about doesn't everybody want their own CP3? I think that there's this idea that it would be that good right out of the gate. Like, in other words, it's a walking, talking, thinking um, machine, and yes, it can be and will be,
Mhm.
but we don't know what its initial state will be. And the good news is that the if you get the hardware right, you have almost infinite opportunity to upgrade the software,
Right,
right?
right.
So, and that's an incredibly important thing. So you as from an engineering process, what you're, getting the hand to have the best articulation possible within the constraints of reality. And those constraints are what you can do with current integration of hardware, from every aspect, from overheating to um, sizing to to just time constraint. Like, if your timeline was you're going to release this in 2050, you have a much longer runway. So assuming that you want something to appear um, 27th 2027, it's just a guess. I'm making something not like full production. I'm talking about like early builds. Like, I think we're pushed back a bit on that. Assuming you want that to happen, uh, you want to get these hardware things to some level of sophistication that, even though you're not controlling them 100% with software today, you can upgrade the software, as long as you have enough inference on board, which
Mhm.
is actually quite an interesting problem. As long as you have enough inference compute on board, you can upgrade, and general compute, like the stuff around it that allows you to really build that command and control pipeline. Um, you can upgrade that, right? That's just a software upgrade. It's just like we do with our cars, over the air date. Same thing will be true of Optimus. So what Elon's trying to do is I think he's regrouping on a lot of the physical aspects of the product, and he's looking at it, I think, with a lens that may be a little bit different than some of the other contenders. The other guys out there, I think, they're focused on the next check coming from an investment community, and they have to.
Yes.
Let's be honest. They have to. It's not like they have this unlimited capital to, Tesla has somewhat unlimited capital to develop this. So its perspective is very, very different. Its perspective is, what do I have to do to make the best hand and the best legs for movement and the best durability and manufacturability of this product? Since Elon's not thinking about what Figure's doing or any of those guys, really. He's thinking about, can I manufacture this at scale? What is its minimum and maximum capabilities within the hardware set? And where's my software trajectory going? And I think that's the way to summarize this.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So in the course of that conversation, we talked a couple of times about inference. I know you put out some information this last week. I'm going to restate something that I've said a couple of times, and I haven't got from my other co-hosts, I haven't gotten exactly the kind of response I was looking for. So I've now set you up to disagree with me
To
again.
be the good one, to be the accurate.
Yeah. So anyway, I have had this feeling for the last year and a half, 2 years. Gee whiz, so sad that Elon didn't bring XAI into or what he's now done at XAI into the Tesla realm, because we lost out on this amazing digital AI opportunity. We were not involved in the LLM explosion. Of course, we also weren't involved in the LLM investment in the tens and tens and tens of billions. But anyway, yeah, I was kind of sad about that. And I'm like, okay, how do we get a piece of that? Let's invest in XAI at least. But then about 2 to 3 weeks ago, that got flipped on its head. I think I can't remember which one of the AI leaders it was that said this. It might have been Justin. I'm not sure. Anyway, basically they're not only running out, but they've really run out of digital data. Absolutely. Tesla has an advantage. XAI has an advantage. They have Twitter jamming millions of new pieces of AI data per day. Google has a certain advantage because of search, but even more so because of YouTube. Yep. So there is new data coming in, but you largely have to go to synthetic data now. But what they said is that real world data was the pinnacle. That was like the amount of real world data in terms of the number of digital pieces, the number of
correct, sir.
Okay. So all of a sudden it flips, and what's happening at Cortex almost becomes more important than what's happening at Colossus.
Well, I mean, here's the summary of that, or to extend it. What's happened with LLMs that trained on extreme but curated web crawl, and then some ancillary text. But if you sum up all of the information there, it reads to information exhaustion right away. I mean, it's very, very quick that most of that information has been processed and sucked into these LLMs. So there's definitely a data hole, and real world data is enormous. It makes that language corpus look extremely small by comparison, extremely small. In fact, that language corpus really is a compression of real world data if you think about it, because it's like a lot of people talk about an LLM being the ultimate language compressor, because it sort of is.
Yeah.
But with relationships. But language itself, or written text, is in fact compression of all the stuff that happened in the real world, right. The human experience, assuming only humans write this stuff, which is true. So real world data, by virtue of the largest sensor input, which is vision, is enormous and practically unlimited. And so Tesla is a player here because it has robots walking around or driving around that have 8 cameras that can collect as much real world data as you can imagine, and then is leaning in soon on Optimus being something that, whereas a vehicle doesn't crawl through your home or your backyard,
Mhm.
Optimus can be there
Right.
observing. And, I would make the argument that much of what is written about things is scarcely even true because, yeah, because I think real world data uh, observationally is difficult for us humans to get to the finish line on.
Yeah.
We observe things, we write. There's PhD theses written about particular topics with very scarce amount of data that doesn't become statistically relevant or doesn't really build the conclusion that the thesis is based on. And sometimes that's purposeful,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
Mhm.
You know, you want to drive to your conclusion, so you collect the data that supports it. But outside that realm, the reality is that the collection of that data is often very, very difficult to do.
Yeah.
In most of those research projects, it's very, very difficult to scale that. And with something like an Optimus or Tesla's robotic eyes in terms of the vehicles, you have the ability to gather data at an unprecedented rate and even more real time than, I mean, an LM is largely as good as its trained model. And that's usually an LM is really giving us a glimpse into the past. Other than, obviously it's augmenting its contextual window by doing some web searches, targeted web searches, gathering information. Something like an XAI, of course, has exclusive access, I might add, to the X feed, which therefore knows about, breaking information across the world, since X is a platform that
Right.
delivers that. Um, but it's small in comparison to the reality of let's run some examples down. I think we've talked about these in the past, but if you have a Tesla robot in the form of vehicles,
Mhm.
in let's say robotaxi, running the streets of any given city, the you'll have those eyes on every major intersection minutes apart. Your granularity, your real timeness of that data will be it'll be hyper real,
Mhm.
and you can see any emergent behavior in the city, unlike anything that's ever happened before. Even the sensors today, you see a lot of major intersections with these cameras, but most of those camera feeds really end up in a control room where someone's kind of staring at them. And but if you have something like a vehicle gathering that data, pushing that data to a cloud environment, an AI operating on that, you could imagine that you can now start to pull out uh, important and emergent information from a city. And we can give examples, but we could say that we knew that a piece of graffiti ended up on that building 2 minutes
Yeah.
ago. Therefore, whoever produced that graffiti is in the area. Maybe we didn't catch them live, but we know that they're around.
Mhm.
And by the way, not only that, but if we see that type of graffiti again, which the AI can clearly identify that graffiti matches another piece of graffiti, uh, and we can basically start to, I hate to say it this way from a privacy point of view, but profile
Yeah.
the citizens in the area, then we certainly can capture the person that does that. Or if our goal is different, if our goal is to remove the graffiti as soon as it arrives, we certainly have a system that can do it. And it's not just the sensors. I want to point out that this isn't about just having the sensors available. It's about having an AI available to process it down to meaningful information. Because here's the reality. The sensors are gathering way more than we can ever consume. So we need to be looking at what we're interested in.
Mhm.
And in some cases, um, we may even ask the AI itself, tell us what we should be interested in,
Yeah.
because it may be unclear to city management or some other party consuming that data, what's possibly available in that data.
Sure.
And so now you have an AI that could deliver on that promise. So I totally agree with what you said. I think the model, is flipped a bit here because real world data is the next frontier. That said, the good news is that if you've got this team over here at XAI doing an enormous amount of work, that information, that the work product there is clearly available to Tesla.
Right.
And in fact, we just saw an example of that in Optimus itself.
Exactly.
Its whole input and output mechanism by voice is resulting from the work at XAI.
So then if we go to the inference side, which is for the three people left who don't know what inference is today, when we go to the output side, the actual work side, the thing that's is gonna allow us to move into a world that we couldn't have imagined we're already in a world we couldn't have imagined 10 years ago. But as we do this, there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done by the computers to replace the work that we're doing, or to speed up the work that we're doing. And Jensen, I think, I'm sure this was him who stated that they believe over 90% of the chips that are being built today are going to be used for inference, not for training.
Right.
So you wrote a paper earlier this week.
Yeah. I encourage people listening to read this article. It's an inference compute is about to explode, and it is. And I think there's a lot of different drivers. Some of them are direct and obvious, and some of them are new kind of uses for inference. But inference is the compute of AI. It's the use of AI. It's the after we train an AI, we're putting it to use. And products like Optimus, the inference demand on a product like that is absolutely categorically insane.
Yeah.
And the reasons I can, the article talks a bit about this and give you some reasons and give you some ideas of why that's true. When you have Optimus, when we have an LLM today, like OpenAI or Grok or one of the others, we're largely giving it a context on a constant basis. We're giving it, like, the past conversation is really a pulled set of information that's going through. So we don't see it, but it's being pushed through, so that the AI itself, the one GPU that got assigned the task to do the work and has access to the model, knows what its input tokens are, right? It's not just the question you asked, it's your historical. But if you look at something like Optimus, our expectations as humans will be that it would recall information at a very granular level, and our expectation will probably be that it'll recall information better than our friends and family. And what I mean by that is, you and I may have had a conversation a year ago, and I'd say, "Hey, Randy, remember when we talked about," and you have some recollection of that. And my expectation is that you would have a recollection of that, but our expectations on Optimus will be tenfold. That we will expect it to know things that, we're in a different room in the house and we'll say, are my jeans in the spare bedroom? What book do I have on the shelf?
So in other words, it's going to replace my sister, who always knew exactly where everything was.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you expect. And so what that means is it's got this observational input,
right,
and it has to hold that. So the storage of that information is important. It has to process that, because the storage of all the raw information is largely impossible, right? It's not going to answer that question about where is this book, or where did I leave my car keys, or it may not know, but let's say it does. It's not going to answer that by running through terabytes of raw data, raw video from its eye sensors. It's going to have distilled that into something. In other words, it's going to have a for lack of better definition, it's going to have an object library, and it's going to remember an object and some locality of that object. It's like a time and place. So keys, master bedroom, 7:52 a.m. last seen or something. And that, to remember that, to know that those are keys, to have done all that work is inference.
Yeah.
Right. It's that the AI itself has had to process that vision data down to something that it's distilled into some kind of, as I said, object list. And to do that requires enormous compute.
And that's on the front side. And then the back side is, I'm going to go get the key for you. I'm going to tell you that I know where the key is. I'm going to, I'm going to pick the key up, bring it back, and hand it to you. I mean, it's all requires enormous amounts.
And what's interesting is, if you read that article, the reader will be it'll be very clear to the reader that there is a divide between power available inference and power constrained inference. And what I mean by that is, our cars have large batteries, 80 to 200 kilowatt hour capacity batteries. Optimus is reported to have around a 20 kilowatt hour battery.
Right.
Compare that to the size of a cell phone battery.
Right.
That the energy available for compute is demonstrably different, orders of magnitude bigger. You could recharge your iPhone off your car a couple thousand, I should have done the math, times, but a lot of times.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is that the expectation that a device like your iPhone can do all these things some of the things we just discussed. Like, imagine that we just said that the iPhone itself is a vision device, and it can, that's too much sensor input, too much inference processing for the size of the power available.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That doesn't mean that it can't kick a lot of that to the cloud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there's issues with that as well. Like, it just, who pays for the compute involved and so forth. So when you start to look at that power divide, you start to realize that you have, in terms of inference chips themselves, like you have some really a good neural core inside an iPhone, but it, measured in terms of TOPS, is extremely limited compared to what's available in, say, the AI5 chip that Tesla builds, that will be really the brain of Optimus.
Right.
And it's interesting because we've seen Elon mention that they're going to go push this AI6 chip, which is more than an order of magnitude in terms of compute available, bigger than, say, AI5, and AI5 is not really out there yet. And that's a pretty good chip. It's, like 5x the TOPS, trillions of operations a second, over AI4, which is in today's vehicles. And I look at that and I say, okay, well, what Tesla's trying to do is build an inference chip for the high power, or the power available side of this. That AI6 chip is not very good for a constrained device like an iPhone. And doesn't mean, by the way, that Tesla itself couldn't downsize and build an inference chip of a smaller power dimension, or run it slower, or there's a bunch of things that can happen there. But it does mean that they're leaning in heavy on the products that they're building today, which are inference power heavy devices like an Optimus, or potentially a drone or something like that, right? But when people say Tesla's going to pop out an iPhone knockoff, or that's a whole different game, and it requires a different type of chip architecture, and because we just can't get as much power there.
All right. Having said that, you can help me with another question, and maybe you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It also, when the AI6 chip was being talked about a few weeks ago in terms of the new dojo, and that the AI6 would be the same chip. They would use the AI6 as the dojo, as the building block of the dojo chips. My first thought, maybe it wasn't my first thought, maybe it was my third thought, was that this was because inference is the future, and that the dojo that was going to be needed by Tesla and others was not going to be very training heavy. It was going to be inference heavy. And therefore, the dojo should be an inference machine.
Well, I mean, a lot's changed since they decided to plunge in on doing Dojo. So, to those listening, Dojo was a chip architecture and a supercomputer designed principally for training AI models, and principally training AI models based on vision data, because it's really training FSD models.
And
Right.
in competition with NVIDIA with their chip, a similar.
Yeah. So exactly. So and exists today in its end of life prototype form, running around 5 to 10% of the training load in the Cortex data center at Tesla's Gigafactory. So what's happened here is that product never really reached escape velocity.
Mhm.
It didn't get to production quality level, and then the world changed underneath it, and so the inference demand became much higher, and Elon and team learned how to take smaller training compute chips and turn them into large compute clusters, coherent compute clusters. So the need, if you will, I mean, what the trade-off here is that Dojo was really designed to do the most compute for the least amount of power. And so the trade-off is that they didn't solve the power problem, meaning the data center still has to be, massive in terms of its power requirements. But what they've done is they've said that, look, this isn't going to be training, while super important for these models, is not where everything's going. Everything's going to be running on the inference side. And so if you're going to pick a horse, and the good news is you can take the inference horse and kind of proxy it for a training horse. There are differences, they're not stark, but there are differences between chips that are dedicated, or designed, I should say, designed for inference versus chips that are designed principally for training. And that's largely about, the difference is really this: training chips are designed for bandwidth and high precision math operations, where the models want to be trained at that level of math, meaning like floating point 32 or 64. And inference chips are more about delivering cycles of AI processing with low latency. So you're trading off bandwidth for latency. Okay. And bandwidth is memory structure and how you move data to the chip to get it to compute. Latency is how quickly you can get potentially a smaller amount of data through.
Right.
Because inference cycles are, the things that happen in real time. So on a car, your inference cycle is happening 15 to 30 times a second, right? You're not so sensitive to that in the data center for training a model. Sure, you want your model to be trained as quickly as possible, of course, but you're not sensitive to that. You're really part of training it as quickly as possible because of the amount of data is absorbing the bandwidth of that data. So there's differences here, but you can largely take a pretty good inference chip, especially if you're designing it properly, which I think they're doing in AI6, and promote it to a quasi-good training chip.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Okay. So taking a little bit of a hard right turn, we are going to have Sir Basher on later tonight. I'm not sure exactly what time because we're also trying to get the Larry Goldberg video where we talk about the Kathy Wood report from yesterday.
Mm.
And so all that's going to happen later today, hopefully, all things being equal. But Sir Basher and I are going to talk a lot about the package, the Elon Musk package.
Yeah, yeah.
But you did have a couple of thoughts, a couple of comments. So maybe close with.
Well, I mean, one thought is you can stop here and go to the 𝐒𝐮𝐚𝐲. He's going to say more interesting stuff.
But
Yeah,
you have a view.
yeah, no, CERN's great here, and CERN and I see eye to eye so much on this, but he's much deeper into that whole, financials and aspects of what's in that package. But I find it amazing. I mean, I think it is probably it is the largest and most interesting, most aggressive CEO pay package in the history of capitalism.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, not just corporate America, which is the frontier of capitalism, but really capitalism in general. I mean, it's quite extraordinary, and I love its structure, because I think it gives Elon a lot of flexibility. He can lean in on the future of the company and still receive his pay. Look, let's be honest with everyone about this. This is not about money for Elon. This is about literally control the company. And, it's, in other words, if he's going to sink his brain into this company, he wants to control its outcomes. He doesn't want a Fidelity or somebody else to make the rules. And he said that in various different ways. Like, example, he said,
he's been clear.
He's been very, yeah. And I mean, and there's reasons for that. He worries about releasing Optimus in an uncontrolled, no kill switch environment. He's genuinely concerned about AIs running amok. And that's one of the reasons that he kind of leaned out of AI for a while and then decided, well, the only way to beat him is to play. I have to, if I want to control AI, I have to build the best AIs, because he's left with that at the end of the day, right? He can't stop other competitors from building. But I mean, I think that it's structured in such a way that it has a lot of flexibility in the sense that, for example, to meet the 20 million total vehicles, they could all be cybercabs, and they could all be owned by Tesla. And that gives them a lot of flexibility. For example, if Elon decided, I don't want to produce automobiles anymore and sell automobiles to consumers, I just want to produce cybercabs because robotaxi's taking off, and he could do that. Yeah. That's not to say he would. I'm just saying that, if we look at a future state of auto, we know something's going to happen. And what we know is that transportation as a service, ushered in by this thing called robotaxi itself, is in fact a business model. It is a business model that threatens vehicle sales.
Yes.
And so Tesla, being a progressive company, unlike many others, is willing to cannibalize its own existence because it sees a future that if he doesn't play in, somebody else comes in and cannibalizes, right? I mean, it's why companies die. Kodak died because it was unwilling to cannibalize its film business, right?
Right.
And so now that doesn't mean that Tesla can't sell the hell out of lower cost vehicles. It has the ability to do that. But it can also decide that robotaxi is the way to go. I also think the beauty of this plan is that it now says that Tesla, for example, take Optimus and the, million unit.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of us see, a lot of people that criticize see Elon talk about numbers as if he's just some individual that, isn't actually the CEO of this company called Tesla. And he's just sort of floating these numbers about the future. But I think what we should take away from this is now that the company itself, the board of directors, ostensibly the shareholders, if they vote for this, are all in alignment about what the goal is. And so Jeff Lutz made a comment the other day about this that I thought was quite useful and insightful, not because of its specifics, but because of the optics of it. He said, imagine a circumstance now where Elon's on the phone with a supplier for looking for certain components for Optimus, which, is a massive build.
Mhm.
This conversation is now understood by the supplier to have another level of seriousness to it in terms of this is the company's goal. This is what the company wants to have happen.
Right.
And therefore the supplier is ready to get in line to deliver on that. And I think that set of optics now, that alignment now kind of gets pushed across all the operational and entities of both internal to the company and external to the company. And that's my comments. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what I thought was interesting in the 2 days since, or has it been 2 days? Was it yesterday? Anyway,
It was yesterday.
so things move awfully fast. And
It was yesterday,
it was
wasn't it?
yesterday, I think, yesterday morning, right? Yeah, Friday morning.
Oh boy.
So, yeah, I know. So in that day, I did read a number of articles and watched a few people on CNBC commenting, and it was fun to contrast it with the 2018 package. So the 2018 package was, oh my gosh, this is a crazy number. I can't believe this is ridiculous that they would pay somebody this much, and also there's no way he'll ever reach it.
Right.
This time, people were like, well, that's a pretty high number. And yeah, it's unprecedented. And should anybody ever be paid $1 trillion to do anything? So it's kind of a philosophical article. And then with regard to making the tranches, it was like nobody said anything. Nobody's like, well, he'll never get to 400 billion a year in profits. I didn't see a single person say that.
Well, I mean, there's an opinion that might not be popular to some people listening, but my point of view is I don't care how much Elon makes
Right.
if he delivers to the shareholders. And I don't think you have a business really getting into the weeds on that unless you're actually one of those things called a shareholder.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, all these people saying, he shouldn't be paid this much. I mean, we all know he's not driven by money.
No.
It's the irony of the decade or of the century is that the richest guy doesn't give a shit about money.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of why he got to be the richest guy. He took the risks and he's really looking at the goals. And I mean, and it's just foolish not to think that Tesla, the company, should want to incentivize Elon Musk, the person, to be that CEO, because Elon, as we can tell, can collect paychecks and dollars and, from investment or other SpaceX, xAI, it's unlimited for him. And in fact, I think even within the comp package itself, it points this out, but it's just obvious is that if Elon leaves, the talent leaves.
Yes.
The talent follows Elon. They could care less about the 5 letters TESLA.
Right. Yeah.
They care about,
being part of the mission,
following the mission. It is.
and the guy.
Yeah, there's something that's very awesome here, and why I care. Why I care, because of my engineering background, is I care about companies that create mission over comp, or, what is your motivation for joining a company, and who is giving you that mission? Who is your leader? Is he got the brains and the brawn and all the pieces to want you to follow him and or her, into the abyss or up the mountain or whatever, however you want to say it. Mission's important, and Elon's compensation to his own awesome people that could find themselves at Meta probably the very next day, and then they'd find themselves incredibly unhappy that they don't know what their marching orders are and they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. But at Tesla or xAI or SpaceX, they know what their mission is. And so this is important for the company to incentivize the person. And I think maybe my last comment about is it really makes Tesla, if Tesla reaches these goals, okay, shareholders are happy,
Sure.
but it's just a brilliant thing to see that if Tesla ends up being the most valuable company in the world by some healthy margin
Right.
over Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia. These are great companies. They have their pluses and minuses. But it's Tesla's day is coming here.
Yeah. 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 Indeed. Indeed it is. All right. Well, Phil Beisel, it has been great as usual to have you on board. And it's becoming a regular thing, our Saturday mornings together. So maybe we'll try to keep that up. For all of you out there, as always, we'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts, what Phil got wrong.
Probably a lot.
What I got right, everything.
Oh, Randy got everything right.
So anyway, Phil, again, thanks for being on board.
Yeah, for sure.
And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.
Okay, bye-bye.